Hey, good morning to you. 8:36 on WMAL, where Washington comes to talk. I'm Vince Colonnese with Mary Walter.
Good morning.
Joining us right now is David Platt. He's the leader and pastor at McLean Bible Church. And it's a busy weekend, David, on Holy Week. Good morning. Good to have you with us.
Good morning. Good to be here.
So, sir, how are you and how is McLean Bible Church handling coronavirus?
Well, a few weeks ago, I guess this is week 5 that we have now been, Sunday will be week 5 gathering online for worship. So we've moved everything we could online, our groups, connecting with each other, our gatherings. But it's been pretty awesome to see. It's obviously not ideal. Like, we cannot look forward enough to when we get to be back together in person. But even to see, like, thousands and thousands more people join us on Sundays online than would normally, and just to celebrate the peace that we can have in the middle of a pandemic has been really powerful.
And how are you doing that without being, how do you create that sense of community when you're not physically together? What hurdles have you had to overcome in order to accomplish that?
Well, we do everything we can to encourage people to, one, just connect online through the different avenues that are available, video calls, chats, that sort of thing. 2, we've got a whole apparatus we put in place practically overnight to start contacting particularly people in our church who are more vulnerable due to age or other factors. And so just making sure we're caring for each other as best as possible, but not even just each other. We put in place over the course of a couple of days a whole local outreach effort. We have a lot of relationships with Title I schools and communities all across Metro DC. And so we transformed our building into a house for receiving all kinds of non-perishable food items and getting in shipments of those commercially, and then packing those and then delivering those out. Obviously trying to do all of that in accord with the CDC guidelines that have been out there over the last few weeks. And so, I mean, all week long, I can't remember the exact statistic, but it was, it's tens of thousands of pounds of food that are going out from our church family and volunteers. We've had so many people just step up and say we want to be a part of helping, particularly more at-risk communities or families who are in need during these days.
Amazing. Cool. God bless you for that. That's obviously the kind of thing that people need right now. David, I wonder, as we see especially churches so disrupted by all of this and people having to stay away from their weekly attendance at services, Mary and I were talking a little bit earlier about this, the impact that has. Like, you wonder, will everyone come back? Are they going to get used to not being at church? And then subsequently, I also think that during times of crisis, people often turn to faith, maybe even for the first time. Are you finding that scenario happening?
Yes, both, Dan. Well, on the first, and there's the thought, okay, well, maybe people just okay, I kind of like worship from in my pajamas in my living room instead of getting up and going. But at the same time, I think people realize, okay, this is good in the meantime, but this is not the same as looking at each other in the eye, next to each other, giving each other a hug, caring for each other in person, worshiping together in person. There's nothing that can replace that. So it's, I think, creating a longing for, okay, this is good for the time, but this is not what we want to continue doing. On the second part, yes, I think there is definitely a spiritual hunger. People are asking questions that we need to be asking in our lives. We sense in a deeper way right now the fragility of life, the inevitability of death for all of us. I mean, these are serious questions that we're wrestling through. And so in the middle of those questions, to see that there's a God who created us, who loves us, who has made a way for us to have confidence in the middle of sickness and suffering, death. Even today on Good Friday, that's what Jesus dying on the cross is all about. God is not distant from us. He has come to us. He has taken on sickness, suffering, death in the face, and we'll celebrate on Sunday that he has conquered death. So I could start preaching right now, but the reality is, like, this is the greatest news in all the world, that when we have faith in Jesus, we don't have to fear sickness or death, because we can know beyond the shadow of a doubt we have eternal life with God. So that reality is all the more potent in a day like we're in right now.
So is there anything you have learned from this, from having to change things up and retool the way you do things, that you have learned and will maybe make a new permanent change of?
There's no question, like, this has forced us to learn how better to connect with people remotely. And I think that's a really good thing. Again, not as the end, like we just want to have just remote community, but there's a lot of people who maybe are hesitant to get up and go to a church on a church gathering on a Sunday. And so their first interaction with the church, with Jesus, with worship of God, might be online, might be remote, through all kinds of different avenues. So we want to steward those, not just during those days. We want to steward those avenues in the days to come in ways that help connect people. Again, not as the end, but I hope that coming out of this, our church, other churches around the country, around the world, will be all the better, in a sense, at connecting with people where they are, like literally in their homes or in their workplaces, and then being able to draw them into a deeper level of community that happens when you're face to face.
David, in the midst of all of this, on Easter Sunday, we are expected to hit our nationwide peak on the number of deaths from coronavirus that we will experience as a country. How does all of this inform, you already gave us kind of a taste of your sermon Sunday, but just confronting coronavirus as a country, what role do you think that plays in having us think about, your homily, your sermon, and what your flock should be thinking about?
Yeah, well, Vince, I just don't think that's a coincidence. Like, don't read too much into that, but to think that we are gathering on Sunday, and on a day I read the same thing, right? It could be like the peak of across our country, even deaths in this, and we hate that. We mourn for that. At the same time, like, what is Easter Sunday? Easter Sunday is a declaration that no matter how dark the days may be, like sickness and suffering and the coronavirus and cancer or despair and death are not the end of the story. Like, Easter is a celebration that hope is a reality for every person sheltered in a home, for every patient who is secluded in a hospital, for every doctor, nurse, medical professional working on the front lines to help others in need. And ultimately, like, Easter is an invitation to every single one of us. Like, you put your trust in the one who came and conquered death, and even in the midst of a worldwide pandemic, you can have otherworldly peace that will never pass away. Like, that truth, I hope like, we're inviting as many people as possible to join us at McLeanBible.org or other churches that people may be a part of, but to celebrate that reality. Or even for people who the things I'm talking about right now just don't seem to make sense, or you're wondering, I got a lot of questions about like that. Like, I hope, like, what better way to spend an hour at least asking these questions and considering, okay, is there a hope? Is there a peace that goes far beyond a worldwide pandemic or the suffering and sickness that we see around us?
Well, very inspiring words on this Good Friday. Pastor David Platt from the McLean Bible Church. Thank you so much for joining us, and a blessed Easter.
Thank you very much, Mary and Vince.